Hello and welcome to another episode of Words and Music. I'm Alemay Fernandez, your host for today, and we are so lucky to have a very special guest on. This is American singer-songwriter and piano phenom, the one and only Peter Cincotti. And he's joining us from New York City at the moment. And we are going to be talking about his upcoming concert here in Singapore on June the 6th at the Victoria Theatre. And of course, his latest album, the highly anticipated Killer on the Keys. Now, this versatile musician is slated to play hits honoring some of his most influential piano icons of all time, along with some of his originals. So he's blending his influences of the great Nat King Cole, Billy Joel, Lady Gaga, John Lennon, Bill Evans, Coldplay, and more. So make sure you get your tickets on Systic and all the ticketing websites before they run out. So let's get started. Hello, Peter, and welcome to Words and Music.
Hi, Alemay. How are you doing?
I'm so well, and thank you so much for doing this with us. We are so happy to have you on the show.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us, you're currently on tour for your brand new album, Killer on the Keys. How's that going?
It's going great. It feels great to tour and play for live audiences. I mean, the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 years have been difficult to play live. So it feels great. You feel the hunger in the crowds, generally speaking.
Definitely. That must be such a rush, isn't it?
It is. No, it's great. And I worked on most of this record, during the pandemic. So it feels good to have it out there in the world now. Again, yeah.
Talk a little bit more about, your creative process for this album. Obviously you did it during COVID. What was sort of your, did you have some sort of impetus or inspiration?
I did. I think, mentioning COVID did affect being in the quarantine. This record did affect the record, the arrangements I wrote, and the songs that I wrote, because I think in general, it formed our life in a myriad of ways and just be stuck here. And as far as the creative process, when it definitely affected that, I wrote this record that are, probably the most personal songs I've ever written. One in particular, but we could talk about that later.
Oh, okay. So you felt it was quite introspective because you were kind of isolated, I suppose.
So very much, I produced this, so being in New York City where I live and looking out, on the street during that period of time, on the city that never sleeps, is a weird thing to watch it sleeping like that. And yeah, of course, you go back to the keyboard and different things come out.
Right. Okay. And did you do this sort of in one shot, or was it kind of spread out throughout the COVID period?
It was spread out, and like you said in the introduction, I've been trying to balance like my favorite piano players of all time. That is really quite a huge range. I mean, you mentioned artists that are generally not in the same sentence. Nat King Cole and like Lady Gaga are not in the same sentence. But I started thinking about music and the way I see it from a really early age, with people like Jerry Lee Lewis, who was a huge influence for me when I was 5 years old. He was the first guy that got me into boogie woogie piano playing, like Elton John and Billy Joel. And then I started just thinking, maybe I should make a record that tries to connect the dots between these very different, put myself in there through the arrangements, but also through the original songs, obviously.
That's so interesting. I love how you've kind of given us a cross section of artists across the generations, and obviously trying to tie them together. But what I think is the beauty of that is, and music in general, is that you can do that. I mean, music basically feeds into the next generation. And so it's really nice to see the progression of the artists from Nat King Cole all the way down to Lady Gaga. You can definitely see the thread that ties them all together, right? I'm sure you found that in your...
Very, very much so. Yeah, no, very much so. And a lot of people, music, it's difficult because nothing can really speak about music other than just playing music. So sometimes these, even on the best of interviews, you can only get so far. At the end of the day, you have to sit back and live music, and that's what really communicates the point. But yeah, there's so much connective tissue that I think is invisible artists that you really just wouldn't think to do. That's why in the song "Killer on the Keys," which is an original song, I put some of those lines, mix blues and Bach with jazz and rock, and just trying to break down some of those genre walls.
Yeah, I mean, and what a great job you did with that song. I mean, it really has a little bit of everything for everyone, um and I loved that all your inspirations were
Thank you.
part of that song as well. So I really enjoyed watching that music video. So was that the inspiration behind the music video?
Oh yeah, the video, yeah. Yeah, the video was also interesting, kind of also related to COVID. Not to keep bringing up COVID because I'm so sick of COVID, as everybody else is. But it did. The video. So one of the things I did during that time period was go to my storage unit and have go through all these old VHS tapes of me growing up as in clubs in New York City, and that's pretty. If you listen to the song "Killer on the Keys," it tells the story. It honors the pianist I admire, but it also tells the story of me growing up in New York. And the music video was one of probably my favorite video we've shot so far because it includes that home footage that I found in the storage unit that I'm sure I would not, if it wasn't COVID, I wouldn't have had the time to go through all that footage. And I'm grateful. You see me as a kid from 8 years old, 9 years old, and up,
Oh,
literally
it's
sitting in with all these
absolutely
people.
adorable. I couldn't get over that footage. And
Thank you.
obviously, it's testament to the phenom that you are. I mean, you're basically a child prodigy. You started so young, and you were playing at such a high level at such a young age. So this is a lovely way to also look back on that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I guess so. It's hard to look at yourself through that lens, but yeah, I think starting young and in New York really made me whatever it is I am. I mean, as a person, but also particularly as a musician, because you just walk out and you're surrounded by music. And I was fortunate enough to have not only that supported me and let me, go to high school and sit in at clubs, but also have teachers that were generous enough to invite me on the stage when I would make all kinds of mistakes. And I still do, but that was a great education.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how amazing that must have been to have that opportunity. I think that's what we love about New York City is that you can do that. You can walk into a club or
Exactly.
you can be in a club jamming with like the biggest names in the industry. And
Right. Right.
and what always gets me about that is some of them are so incredibly humble and welcoming, and they're like
Very
more than
much.
happy to have you on stage with them or invite you to join them or jam with them. And I think that's the biggest part of the education as a musician, right? Or at least
Very much
I,
so.
I find that for myself
There's
as well. Yeah.
there's only so, and that's also another line in the song about just only so much you can learn really by by the book. You got to go out and do it and make mistakes, and that's the best education.
Exactly. So while we're on this topic, tell us about the incredible, I mean, you have a I mean, a laundry list of incredible people that you've been inspired by and gotten to work with over your career. Could you give us a sense of, okay, you said you started obviously in the New York clubs. Give us a sense of some of the artists you got to learn from in New York. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the incredible producers you've gotten to work with over your career as well. So,
Yeah,
how,
sure. I mean, probably a bunch you may not have heard of, but they were pivotal in my upbringing and my education here in New York. People like everyone from names like Cliff Corman to Leanne Ledgerwood to James Williams, who was a notable at a steakhouse that all had the greatest music, greatest musicians, and he would play there, do like Wednesday, and I would sit in with him, 15, up into names you have heard of, like Harry Connick Jr., who I met when I was 7 years old, and he was so generous to me through the age. To names like Ellis Marsalis or just a myriad of of people that I've been grateful to absorb. Fred Hirsch was another one. I remember on my first record I was playing, doing a cover of the Sesame Street Rainbow Connection song that I love. It's from it was written by Kenny Asher, one of the greatest melodies. But that's on my first album, and I remember meeting with Fred Hirsch, talking about the harmonies on that, and how to maybe make it my own. And then I went through a period where I just did all these trying to find my own voice in the cover songs. I just started writing music, and all of a sudden that's all I did. And that's when I met David Foster, who's a big name producer. We could talk about that separately, but it's been definitely a process through the years.
Yeah, and just some wonderful people. Like, I was watching your interviews and you talked about getting to open for Ray Charles. That must have been
Oh yeah,
absolutely incredible.
it was incredible. I opened for him. We had a split bill. I couldn't believe my name was next to him. And if you come to the show, I will tell you the story of how I met Ray Charles, and
You should
it
tell us
was
now.
very unique. Can I give it away now? I'll give you the nutshell version. But I did meet him, and one of the things I noticed on I did my show, and then there was an intermission, and he did his show, and I was just fascinated that it was Ray Charles. So I watched the whole show. But one of the things I noticed, there was no monitors on stage. There was no speakers. So for those of the listeners who don't know what they are, they're, so you could hear yourself, especially in a big hall. You need a little speaker so you could hear yourself. Otherwise, it all becomes a washy mess. And Ray Charles had no monitors, and he had one of the tightest bands I'd ever heard, and the trumpet players miles away from him. And he would like lift his shoulder or tilt his head, and they would just come in so tight. Then after his show, somebody from his camp comes back and says, "Would you like to, Mr. Charles?" And I said, "Of course, I would love to." Back, and he's sitting in the dressing room, and he's got two guys behind him. I'll never forget it. He was really nice. I've heard all kinds of stories. He was lovely, and I thanked him for letting me share the stage, and what an honor it was. And then right before I left, I said, "I have a question, if you don't mind." He goes, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "How do you hear yourself on stage without any monitors?" And then he leaned in and he said, "I like to hear what the people hear," which had such an impact on me. I took away all my monitors for the rest of my tour. And then I realized I was not Ray Charles, and we put them back very quickly, by the way.
I was going to say, I mean,
ridiculous.
I love this line. I want to hear what the people hear, but the thing is, the people don't actually hear what we hear on stage.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that. I was going to say it's not exactly how it works, but I'm not about to correct him.
Of course. But you're not going to question Ray Charles. You're going to be like,
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, look at us now. We got 3 headphones on. We do it delayed. We got mics. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I know. The amount of technical stuff that goes on to make these things happen is insane. Exactly. And he's like, nope, no monitors for me. I mean, I can't even imagine doing a show without a monitor. That would just...
Especially with a big band like that. It was...
Exactly. That's insane. But really, it's just testament to his genius and his talent, I think, that he can do.
Yes, also the generation too. That generation, they grew up performing before we had any of this stuff. So
exactly. I mean, he's come from a time when there weren't monitors and there wasn't all this technology, right? So he's used to lo-fi, which is
exactly.
You gotta, I mean, much respect, obviously. Okay, that's such a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Okay.
No, of course.
Let's now quickly move on to some of the other amazing artists you've gotten to work with. I mean, let's talk about producers now. You've gotten to work with two of the biggest music producers of all time. I mean, Phil Ramone and David Foster. It doesn't get bigger than that in terms of music producers. I mean, multi-Grammy award winning and worked on some of the most iconic albums of all time. I was talking about the incredible career you've had in terms of being able to work with two of the most amazing producers of all time. And most people don't even get one. You've gotten two. I mean,
no, that's true. I've been lucky.
That's absolutely insane. No, but also so happy for you. And what an incredible experience that must have been. So just give us an idea. I mean, firstly, Phil Ramone. I mean, He's only been responsible for some of the most iconic recordings of all time. Um, and, one of them, obviously, The Stranger by your hero, Billy Joel,
Yes,
which
yes.
is like, I mean, come on, hands down, one of the best Billy Joel albums. Um, and so, obviously, getting to work with someone like that, I mean, tell us how that must have been for you.
No, it was incredible. And yeah, you're right. Both of them are legends, and also like classics in a classic way. You know, they've worked with like artists that have spanned generations. And Phil, I met. I was again back to New York City. I was playing clubs in the city, and I kind of got signed the old-fashioned way, where just being out there playing, and he was in the crowd one night doing Monday nights. I think I was like 16, or no, I was 17. I was doing Monday nights, and he showed up and wanted to make my first record. I was surrounded by his amazing team, and he was really a good guy. Like, you know, he was a rare breed. He was a nice guy. He was very supportive of like what was in your heart as an artist, and he did have a sort of sixth sense on who to surround you with. It was a very different kind of producing David Foster, who's really hands on. And what I love working about with David was that you could play something on the piano, and then he'll just sit down and play it right back to you. And I met David at a time in my life where that kind of producing was really valuable to me. But both of them they had different skills. They're very different kinds of producers, but they're both legends that I'm lucky to have worked with.
Yeah, I can imagine. So tell us how working with these two incredible legendary music producers helped you when you produced your album after working with them.
Well, I try to learn as much as I can and steal as many up. And in a way, production has become like the third element of what I do, or maybe even now, because over the last few records, this record and the last one, and I made a record called Metropolis with John Fields, who is a great producer. He's kind of producer, not in the David Foster, Phil Ramone world, but really a talented guy too. I learned a lot from his style of production. So I've been trying to pick up all these different tools, and over the last, I'd say five, actually maybe 8 years, its own language, almost like playing the piano or soloing or writing lyrics, or the production element or how things are presented become more and more and more important to me. And I've been taking things from what I've learned from different all of these guys you mentioned, and seeing how it comes out in a record like this. It's been really fun and stimulating.
Okay, so you've basically just taken bits of all the things you've learned from all these amazing producers and you're kind of applying it to your own
Oh yeah,
production style.
I guess so. But it's no different than anything else. It's just, if you want to write, you got to read the best people. If you want to solo on an instrument, you got to listen to the best people. If you want to you want to play tennis better, you got to get a better tennis partner. It's like no different than anything else. So I try to learn as much as I can by the people, I've been lucky enough to work with.
Well, that's great. Okay, so tell us, having done all these things, and I mean, you started, relatively young, and were the youngest artist ever to reach number one on the Billboard Jazz charts. That must have felt amazing. Um, do you do you see the major changes that have happened from the 18-year-old you to the you now in terms of your style of playing, how you approach the music, and even how you write?
Oh yeah, very much. It's also kind of like anything else, even in life, when you look at yourself, what you were maybe 10 years before, you start to see you have clarity on who you were as a person. It was like, oh, I was going through that, or you start to piece together things. It's the same with music. I listen back to the records and instantly hear new things about who I was at the time, what I would do differently now, what I was searching for but didn't I know. I mean, I hope that kind of journey never ends. I mean, I have that. I hope I listen to this current killer on the keys in 3 years and have clarity on it. In the moment, you're just kind of in this unconscious place of getting things out. But yeah, there's been a ton of changes, and the records I've made since when I was 18 have really been very, very different. I mean, the David Foster records and almost entirely different than the first one. But if you listen to that, I see all this connective tissue, but on a marketing standpoint, they've been placed in different boxes. One has been called jazz, one has been called pop, one is, they're different styles, which was part of the impetus to try to connect the dots on this current album, as we've already talked about.
Right, exactly. But I think that's your superpower. You've found a way to
Yeah, thanks.
to combine all these genres and make it seem so effortless. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I think
Thank you. That's nice.
that's something that audiences can really look forward to, like how you've managed to do that, to start, with a wonderfully jazzy vibe and then sort of brought us into the fusion of the pop and the rock and the blues and you know, it just bebop,
Well,
everything.
thank
Like,
you. I mean,
I think that's what I really appreciated about listening to your music. I could really hear the progression.
that that's so nice, and it's nice to hear. It's like I said, you don't really know what you're doing until you've done it, and then you see, wow. But I do. There's two kinds of music: good music and bad music. This whole genre thing is,
As long as you're producing good music, it really shouldn't matter. Um, and
right.
and anyway, I mean, if we talk about the progression of music in general, it's all an amalgamation of different bits of influences that you've made over your lifetime, and you come up with your own little fusion, right? So that's how music
Exactly.
progresses anyway. So it should be like that. Um,
I agree.
so I'm
Exactly.
with you when you say it's either good music or bad music. It's very seldom about the genre.
Right. That's so true.
For the people who spotted you in Spider-Man 2, where you did a cameo, um, how did that happen? And you also appeared in the next Netflix series House of Cards with Kevin Spacey. Uh, Tell us about your experiences on film and television.
Yeah, they've been like these random things that have just come across my plate. I mean, the Spider-Man thing kind of came out of nowhere. And they asked me to make this cameo. It's funny if you notice it. I mean, it happened so quickly. It's like a 2 second thing, but it was during the time of, I think it was my first record launch at that time. So but it was a really fun memory to be memorialized,
Yeah.
huge as that. But that just came across. It had to be through either a manager or the film company who reached out and thought that would make our thing similar. Um, I basically played myself. It wasn't like a method acting thing. I played somebody that was a guest of the president at the time, and that was a really fun thing to shoot.
I mean, what a great first cameo, right? That's
I know, exactly, exactly.
It seems like I'm sensing a pattern here, Peter. I'm noticing that most people wait a lifetime for these kind of opportunities, and they just kind of happen to you like
Uh,
first
they happen when they happen.
sort of first
They
experiences
happen.
in, and you're like, yeah, he doesn't just start, like regular people and move the way up. He just goes from zero to
No.
hero, and he's the best producers, the
But
biggest movies. I mean,
no, but you know what? When you sum it up like that, it's unfair because you go back to zero very quickly, and then you have zero, and then you go up, and then you go down, and it's just it's when you read the bio, it's all glorious and glamorous, but doing music for a living, you have to need to do it. It's not an easy business.
no,
It's
of course.
hard, it's
I
hard.
and I wasn't taking
It's
away from
so
your hard work.
hard.
I'm sorry. I was not
No, no,
taking
not at
away
all.
from
I'm
your
just
hard work
saying,
at all.
and no, no, I don't mean it. No, I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying, anybody listening who wants to be sure you really love it and need to play music because there's all kinds of crap and especially now everything's changing with social
Yes,
media and the record labels roles changing, the agents, the manager. It's a tricky business. It's
it
not
is
stable. It's
indeed.
up and down and up and down.
It is indeed. And
Yeah,
I mean, like I said, I'm not taking
but
away
it's
from the
fun.
fact that in between all your wonderfully fabulous experiences, there's been a lot of hard work and a lot of pavement,
It's
pounding pavement and again, not taking away from all the hard work that
no,
you've
no,
put in.
I really didn't take it that way. It was more of just, what everyone should know if they're aspiring to do it. Stephen Sondheim has a great quote. He talked about it. I think it took him 10 years to write something musical that he ended up writing. And then if I remember correctly, people were saying, where was Stephen Sondheim for 10 years? He's like, writing the musical. These things don't get written by themselves.
I
So
know, and
there are
I
these
think,
gaps.
yeah, I think that's the thing that people don't realize. A lot of times it's like, I have people ask me, so when's your next album coming out? When's your next? And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, albums don't appear like out of nowhere. They take time and effort and energy and
Exactly.
inspiration. And, being creative is a really subjective thing. And it's very much inspiration based. So you can't just kind of sit down and be like, okay, I'm gonna write an album today.
Of
It's
course. No, of course.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
it's a lot of living, isn't it? It's a lot of experiencing things and going through things and then having something to say about those experiences, right?
Exactly. 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 No, that's
Uh,
correct. Yeah.
and so I've always admired songwriters who can just churn it out, like because I'm not like that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. I hear those stories about Randy Newman that every day, like 9 o'clock, 9 to 5, and like writes a song. I mean, there are guys like that, and then there's guys from what I hear, like Elton John, who just is like a 2 week block and then just knocks out whatever that thing is, and then he goes back. So there's different, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, so how would you say it is for you? What's your inspiration spiral like?
It's definitely a blend. I think deadlines really help, no matter what. I think if you're just going to lean too far into the inspiration world of this conversation, things don't really get done. You have to have enough inspiration, but then you got to work. And there's plenty of times I've not felt inspired, and force myself to work, and you find inspiration. I mean, I really believe in that. If you wait to feel for your mood, I mean, you're going to be waiting. During inspiration is easy. It's the rest of it that you have to force yourself to work.
Right, exactly. So what are some of your routines? Do you have like a ritual when you write, or is there certain things you have to have, or do you have to be in a certain mood, a certain kind of music, certain kind of room?
It's changed, and I am sensitive to the room now that you mentioned that. I don't like my back to the door, or like the angle of the piano has to be a certain way. I'm not fully crazy. I'm only partially crazy, but I do believe in those things that, like, you got to feel right, and it's sometimes that's the physical orientation of really, like rituals. A lot of times things come in the middle of the night when it's inconvenient. There's a big unconscious part of this what I've done. I think for some reason I've had singles that have literally appeared in dreams. Sometimes I had a song that was a single in Italy called Palermo, and almost that entire dream I had. So a lot of times during the night, I will either record a voice memo, or so there's that stuff. Those are like little gifts, and then not all of them are good, but they come to you. And then there's the other stuff you got to dig to find.
Right. All right. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. I like that you had an entire song just from a dream. That's really nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
almost.
So, okay. So I guess, well, let's see. We've pretty much talked about, I think most things. Um, so let's get to what. Oh, very quickly before we talk about what the fans can expect when you come here.
Yeah.
Um, just a little bit about your travels in Asia, and have you been to Singapore before?
I have once, many years ago. It had to be maybe 15 years ago already. And I cannot wait to come back. I'm looking forward to this tour. All over, we go to Tokyo. We have 4 shows, and we go all around. We go to Jakarta, but I'm really looking forward to Singapore and being at the Victoria Theater. I've never played there, and I'm really anxious to do that.
Well, okay. Well, we can't wait to have you, but before that,
Yes.
what can audiences expect?
It's been so long that I want to have the chance to revise my answer because it's been many years, and these have changed. They also change with the kind of music that you're presenting to the crowd, and maybe the kind of venue that you're playing in. I remember my first show in I think it was Japan, and we were club, but I was playing pretty jazz oriented stuff with a trio, and I really thought they didn't like it because I felt very polite for the room we were playing and the kind of songs we were playing. It was, but then applause didn't start encores than I ever had before. We had like 3 encores, but the way they expressed it was very different than the flows of an American audience, and you feel that. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, sometimes um, Asian audiences can come across a little bit more conservative, I think. But then, good news is, I think now that we're in 2023, people are a lot more expressive, I think, and
Yeah,
also, I
well,
think after being locked up for 2.5 years,
that's
everybody's
also
just like,
true. I'll give you the counter story though, because I've had that was just my first experience getting used to it. But we've had other shows. We had a show in Shanghai once, and we had a recent show in Seoul. I mean, they were absolutely um, so vibrant and present and active. So I've seen the gamut in Asia. It's just I can't wait for this tour to see with new music express themselves. I can't wait to share it with them and see what happens.
yeah, I mean, I know they're gonna love this, and I know they're going to be super excited. And tell us a little bit about what we can expect at your show.
So you'll hear. I'll be with 3 really great musicians that I'm bringing from New York. Mark Lewandowski on the bass, Tony Glauci on the trumpet and the keyboard, and Joe Nero on the drums. So I'll have a really great band, and you'll hear
I'm sorry,
previews from the
could you
new
say their
album
names
Killer on
again? Sorry. Sorry, could you say their
from
3 names again?
Mark Lewandowski on the bass, and it's Tony Glauci on the trumpet and the keyboard, and Joe Nero on the drums. And yeah, so they're really great and different, and yeah, having them together, you'll hear songs from my past records, Ramon records, and the David Foster record, but you'll hear also new stuff from the Killer on the Keys album. Um, a new single we produced, which is not on the record, but it's on the EPs that we'll be bringing, which is My First Hornsby Classic, who's another great piano guy that has really influenced me. The song he wrote, The Way It Is, we just released that as a single, but it'll be on the CP. And then I'll tell some stories, about, life on the road and some people I've met and some of my influences. And I'll be mixing all these people we talked about. And it's a fun show to play. I will say that.
Well, well, we are definitely looking forward to having you. Thank you so much, Peter, for your
Oh,
time
thank
today
you.
and
No,
for
not at
sharing all these incredible
all.
stories. I mean,
That's nice.
when I was
Thank
doing
you
my
for having me.
research, to do this interview, I was like, wow, there's so much to talk about. I honestly don't know if we'll have enough time. I could literally sit here and listen to your stories for hours.
Well,
Um,
that's nice. That's nice. Well, no, I liked talking to you too. And you didn't hit. I'll tell you when I see you about when I met David Guetta in France and we combine all this different stuff. But are you going to come to the show? Are you going to come
I'm
on June 6th?
I'm so sorry. Don't kill me.
I can't. We're on Zoom.
But I'm actually going to be in the States.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so I'm actually about to go
That's
on tour in the States. So I'm going to be in the States.
uh,
Um, I don't. Sorry, I
well,
don't
one
know
of
if
these days
I
we'll
don't know if
meet. I hope.
I don't know if I told you, but I'm a jazz singer.
No, I know you are.
Okay, okay. Sorry,
So
I
where are
just
you
realized
going
I
in the
didn't
States?
introduce myself. Um, so I'm doing two coasts. I'm starting in San Francisco, and then I'm coming to New York. So I'm doing 2 weeks in each city,
Amazing,
and I'm doing two shows in each city.
amazing.
So I'm actually gonna get to do a show in New Jersey with Nat Adderley Jr. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Wow. Where in Jersey?
So he lives in New Brunswick.
Oh, okay, I know. I like. I'm a New Jersey fan. New Jersey gets. I like. I go to New Jersey. I've played in New Jersey. Yeah.
Do you know the
Anyway,
Tavern
that's
on
awesome.
George in New Brunswick?
I don't know if I know that. I'll look it up.
So basically it's part of the
I'll
New
look it up.
Brunswick Jazz Project, and
Okay.
it's a not-for-profit project that's run by Jerry Weldon, who plays in Harry Connick's big band.
I know Jerry. I know Jerry. I'm like 8 years old.
Yeah, so Jerry's also on the gig with me and Nat.
Tell him hello for me.
I will. And I'm really lucky. I got to meet Jerry when he came to Singapore. He was subbing in the Count Basie Orchestra, and I got to do a gig with them, and I got to meet him. And so we became friends. And so
He's
his wife,
great.
Virginia, and him, they have this New Brunswick jazz project where they try and bring, world-class jazz to Tavern on George in New Brunswick.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and luckily for me, Nat, I also got to meet Nat because he came to Singapore to perform. And luckily for me, he lives in New Brunswick, so it's all very convenient for him.
That's great. Yeah, exactly. Well, have a great tour. One of these days we'll meet. And
Yeah,
thank you for.
I really hope I get to meet you in real life at some point. Are you going to be in New York at the end of June? Because then we can maybe catch up while I'm there.
Maybe I think I get back that last week. So at the moment, but the travel plans keep changing. But we'll stay in touch. I would love that.
Okay, yes, I will give you a buzz when I'm in town, and hopefully you'll be in town at the same time. I leave on July
That's
the 3rd.
perfect.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. We made overlap then. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, look, Peter, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for staying up late to speak to us today.
That's okay. My pleasure.
We are so excited to have you. We can't wait to see you. Everybody needs to go and get tickets to Peter Cincotti's show here in Singapore, June the 6th at the Victoria Theatre. Tickets are available at Cystic and all good ticketing sites. And Peter, have a wonderful trip, have a wonderful tour, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you so much.